building companies is an ongoing fixing / optimization process. You're constantly running into things that either you think are completely broken and you're trying to fix, or you're looking at them and you say, we can do a lot better there. Let's optimize. So that's really what what your role is as CEO, is trying to identify those types of things and trying to provide directives and guidance and when you need to roll up your sleeves and do some of the work yourself. That's absolutely something you need to do as well.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. Meet Marc Gaffan, CEO of Hysolate. Marc is a successful CEO, entrepreneur, and cybersecurity veteran. Prior to joining Hysolate, Marc was the Chief Business Officer at Nexar and an executive in residence at Bessemer Venture Partners. In 2009, Gaffan co-founded Incapsula, and after its acquisition by Imperva, led the Incapsula business as CEO to $100 million in run rate, protecting millions of websites worldwide and many of the world's largest enterprises and telcos. Marc is a thought leader and has appeared before the US Congress, FDIC, and Federal Trade Commission on cybersecurity and identity theft topics. He holds an MBA and BSc in Computer Science and Economics from Tel Aviv University. Marc Gaffan, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you today?
I'm well, Michael. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for being here, a leader in the cyber world. I'm really excited for these next 20 minutes. Just like with a lot of episodes, I know a little bit about where we're going to start, but I have no idea where we're going to end. Your career is so fascinating today. You're the CEO of Hysolate, but if I just begin to list the different things that you've been a part of, most importantly, of course, working at Zapier 20 years ago, you completely filled my heart with that one before we started. But, very shortly, board member of a few amazing companies, Chief Business Officer of Nexar before, a company that I love. You were executive in residence in Bessemer Venture Partners. You were the CEO and co-founder of Incapsula, which was acquired by Imperva, and Moshe Lipsker from Imperva was also on this show. And so before, the director of product marketing of RSA Security, and a bunch more things that I'm not even going to go into right now. First, I want to start off grand. Marc, how do you describe your career? If you had to think about, what your journey is like, what are some thoughts that come to mind? Because you've done so much and you've worn so many hats.
So, I like to describe my career as I started off as a techie, and, over the years moved into product and business hats. I'm actually a big believer of that journey, especially in the high tech world. I think that in order to lead, you've got to have a sound technical or product, at least appetite. And I'm if you look at a career that I would try and plan, those are some of the milestones I would look to build into a master plan.
I love it. Okay, so what I'd love to understand a little bit from your perspective is where we're at right now, specifically perhaps in Israel or the cyber world, and the different trends that, perhaps looking at the last dozen or so years and what's been happening, or 24 years and what's been happening. And then I'd like to also transition a little bit to what you're doing today with Hysolate, and more in the context of leadership in cyberspace and what does it mean to be a leader in this domain. So tell me a little bit about the cyberspace in general and what you've observed has changed within the cyberspace in Israel.
So I've been in the cyberspace since 2005. My first cybersecurity company was a company called Cyota that became part of RSA. Most of the people don't know that name. They call it Naftali Bennett's company. But essentially, my cyber career had started about 16 years ago. And I would say that as technology is accelerating, so the cyber requirements or the threats essentially have become even more severe. And I think, like everyone else, over the last 18 or 19 months since COVID broke, the acceleration or the digital transformation that we're going through the entire world is going to accelerate the need for for additional cybersecurity measures. There's new threats that are being introduced. There's new formats of work, with the remote work from anywhere, hybrid work. These are all things. This is a massive change in paradigm. There's those that will say that we've leapfrogged 10 years in 18 months in terms of progression. When you have something like this, such a tidal wave that's taking place, there's lots of ways to try and address them, and that creates a great foundation for innovation.
I think I love that, and if you're looking now at this idea of innovation, and you're looking at the cyberspace, what have you found helpful as you're navigating through thinking about these threats and about where innovation is going to take place in this cat and mouse game? What has been your North Star in thinking through what are the next big things that I should be working on, because you've worked on so many different things?
So it's a good point, that it very much aligns with what we're doing at Hysolate. The tidal shift from an IT perspective is the fact that so many people are working remotely. If 2 years ago, most organizations and most enterprises assumed that 80 or 90% of people were going to be within the corporate firewall 80 to 90% of the time. That's how they built their threat models, and that's how they built their security strategies. That all changed. So all of a sudden, we went to almost 100% of the people, or 100% of the time, outside of the firewall now. That means that we are using our home networks way, way more than we've used them before. That means that we're using our personal devices more than we've used them before for corporate stuff. We're giving our kids often the opportunity, or not the opportunity, but we need to render our corporate devices to members of our family. Our corporate devices are sitting on our kitchen tables because we're working from home. And I think that everyone's come to the realization that that's going to stay to some extent. Okay, we're not going to go all the way back to the office, and we're not going to stay at home 100% of the time. We're going to be, some type of an accordion, essentially, of this, this hybrid work. But what that means really, if you're planning, if you're an IT guy, if you're a security guy, and you're planning your strategy, you really have to address both extreme situations today, or a situation where everyone could be working from home, because I think no one's going to say never again about a pandemic, because we've been burnt, and we're also seeing that once, even throughout this pandemic, when we've ruled victory, we've seen that things are not so we actually aren't so victorious, and we're kind of back to square one. So this whole notion of having to enable work from everywhere is a new theme, or a new axiom that we need to take into consideration as we build our IT and security strategies.
So I want to dwell on this point for just a couple more minutes, because I think it's fascinating, and it's something that we all need to stop and think about. Because when I look back at some of the most incredible innovations in the cyberspace, at least in the Israeli scene, let's say Checkpoint, for example, we're thinking about these firewalls, we're thinking about these protection systems on-prem, within organizations that are going to help us be isolated within our organizations. So what's happening now, and where do you think we're going to be seeing a lot of the cyber shift as we're transitioning now to, working remotely and accepting that as a new reality, especially in a world where we're also accepting that, for example, PPI and sensitive data is being used by a lot of people and a lot of employees on a lot of devices?
So first of all, I think we all need to recognize the fact that data is the new gold, or data is the new diamonds, or data is the new oil, call it whatever you want, but data is the new, I would call it non-natural resource that is super, super highly priced and highly valued. And the same way it's valued by corporations, and what we can do with the data, that's how valued it is by the cyber criminals. They realize that getting their hands on the data has a huge amount of potential. It's become a high-priced commodity, essentially. So everyone's after, the data, essentially, and all cyber attacks are essentially out to typically get data. You do get scenarios which it's totally financial around ransomware. We're not trying to steal your data, we're just trying to extort you. But mostly people want to steal data, or either to extort you, or to use that data to extort others. there's always a financial incentive behind it, unless it's nation state or espionage, which is a big part of the cybersecurity space. But I would say that B2B, B2C is where most of us are focused, and that's where most of our concerns are, specifically around our own privacy. So assuming that data is the center of gravity, it's all about protecting the data, and it's about protecting access to data, because we need to give different people in the organizations and different systems access to data. The question is, how do we do this securely? And it's not, now that there's no perimeter and where all of us are outside of the firewall, our laptops essentially have become our new offices. So that's the new, that's the new office for us, or that's the new perimeter, which essentially means that there's no perimeter. And the question is, how do we give people the flexibility to do what they need to do on their laptop so that they can be productive, that they can browse the web and they can communicate and they can collaborate, but also how can they touch corporate systems and data which are most likely sensitive without jeopardizing corporate security?
Right. So effective leadership in cyberspace, you're coming in with your own background and your understanding of what's happening here. And, effectively, you've managed to be a very successful executive in a variety of companies. And so that's not by chance. What does it mean to be an effective leader in your eyes, specifically in the cyber domain, whether it's in the interpersonal part, in the visionary part, and how are you bringing that into Hysolate right now?
I don't think that the cybersecurity space is different from a leadership role than any other space. I just happen to find myself spend a lot of time in the space, become I won't say a domain expert, but as far as I'm concerned, that's an area that I can be most effective in because of the experience. I think at the end of the day, it's very much about the people that you have on your team. It's about building strong teams. You're not going to do this journey alone. Building a company is something that's it's a marathon. It doesn't take typically a year or 2 or 3. It takes a lot more than that. You need the right people around you. The ability to execute with the right team is going to be key. And I think it's all about, how do you bring the right people on board? How do you empower them? How do you give them the ability to, on the one hand, execute, but on the other hand, and have, latitude, but on the other hand, stay focused and all stay aligned. Often there's conflicting interests and there's conflicting priorities. It's how do you keep everyone aligned and keeping everyone on the same page, but, and doing that effectively.
And I think that an important question, though, that needs to be asked is also why start another company? You've started companies, you've been an executive in existing companies, you've been in the venture capital world. Why start another company at this point?
So I didn't actually start Hysolate. I joined Hysolate 2 years ago as a CEO, more of a, you can call it a professional CEO, as someone who's been in this role before. So I didn't start Hysolate, but I decided to join a very early stage company, which is, with all due respect, it's way closer to the beginning of the journey than to the end of the journey. It's a part of the journey that I enjoy. It's about figuring out, what customers want, what customers need, trying to find out, how we can, with the building blocks that we have, how can we address this in the most effective way. It was also about meeting the right people. So meeting my partner at Hysolate, Tal, who was the founder of the company and the CEO before me. And, we saw that we could forge a really good partnership in which Tal, owns the technical and product side. And I can focus more on the business and growing the company. So, we found that to be, in not by starting a company, but as we got to know each other and as we got to formulate the idea of me coming in, it sounded like the right, fit from us. I also, know a lot of the investors on the team. I've had relationships with them in the past, whether it's Bessemer or the partners at Teammate, which I've had interactions with in the past. So at the end of the day, the partners that you join, the founders, the management team, the investors, a big part of the decision is, are you joining a group of people that you want to work with? In addition to the idea and the potential in the market, it's a lot easier, by the way, to pivot the product, sometimes even to pivot the entire market. But switching out the team and investors and founders is a lot harder.
Right.
Early stage companies, as if I put my investor or my angel investor hat here on, for a second, it's really about the team. Again, you can change ideas, you can change directions. It's very difficult to change the team, or the impact of changing the team is significant. So, that's why I decided to join Hysolate.
And so, what steps did you take to make it as smooth of a transition as possible? No matter what, changing leadership or adding to a leadership to an existing company, it's not a trivial process. And I'm really curious as to what, with your experience, what did you do as you transitioned into this role that you felt either helped or didn't help make this process a smooth one, not just for you, but also for a lot of the employees that were already in the company and for all the different stakeholders that were involved?
Right. So I think that, the most important thing to do, and this is something that I try to do as much as possible, is to spend the first few months in really learning, I would say, the 360 of the company, which means talking to customers, understanding, or talking to prospects and customers, understanding what's, how we're solving their problem, to what extent we can solve their problems, understanding and talking to all the employees in the company, understanding, what's driving them, are they in a good place, are our teams built effectively, are we executing, and doing that, top down. So talking to all the executives, talking to all the managers, talking to all the employees, understanding, where we can try and optimize. And then trying to piece things together from an execution perspective to see, how are we executing, building KPIs, understanding what are the most important things to do. There's always in any business, and this is not just a new business that you join. There's always things to fix. Companies are or building companies is an ongoing fixing / optimization process. You're constantly running into things that either you think are completely broken and you're trying to fix, or you're looking at them and you say, we can do a lot better there. Let's optimize. So that's really what what your role is as CEO, is trying to identify those types of things and trying to provide directives and guidance and when you need to roll up your sleeves and do some of the work yourself. That's absolutely something you need to do as well. But that's really what CEOs should be doing, and that's those are the things that I did for the first few months, until we built a new strategy. A big tidal wave hit us, as we were formulating, our strategy, which was COVID, and a lot of the changes that we made were driven by the fact that we anticipated that COVID would change the workforce landscape. And we decided to address that with the product portfolio, not the product portfolio, but the product building blocks that we had. We re-architected a product. We built a product that would be, very, very effective in a remote work type of scenario. That's the new Hysolate for the last, 14, 15 months since we made some of the changes. We think that the world's changed, and I always say that building a startup is like surfing. You get on your board, you paddle out into the water, and you look for a wave. And if the wave comes and you can ride it, great. If the wave passes you, don't try and catch that wave. Look back for another wave. Startups need to ride waves. It's really difficult. Google can create a wave. Facebook can create a wave. Regulators can create waves. A single company, it's really difficult for a single company to create a wave, if at all. Startups are about riding the wave and disrupting existing waves. That's kind of I've never, by the way, ever gotten on a surfboard. I grew up 5 minutes from the beach, and I was never a surfer. All my friends were surfers, but not me.
No, I'm laughing because I love this analogy. I picked up surfing in the last couple of months, and when I'm there and I'm waiting for that wave, and I'm seeing people try to paddle like crazy because they're about to miss the wave. Most of the time they miss it, and what they don't realize is that if they were to just wait for a few more seconds and to look back and breathe, then they would have time to prepare for this next wave that's about to come. And sometimes it takes minutes, sometimes it takes seconds, but it's all about that perfect timing. and having that conviction and doing it, doing it calmly and with a lot of purpose. And so I love that. I love that analogy. Thank you, Marc. Take me back to your childhood, before Cyber, before Zapper, before Cyota. Who is Marc? What really fascinates you? What sparks your curiosity? In elementary school and middle school.
I think most of my middle school and high school. I actually didn't go to middle school, by the way. We didn't have middle school where I grew up. We had preschool, we had school, and we had a high school. But I spent
Yep.
most of my schooling years on a tennis court. I was infatuated with tennis. I played tennis. I trained 4 or 5 times a week. I played tournaments. I went abroad. It was really the biggest part of my
Wow.
childhood was on the tennis court. So my school was
Incredible.
great. I did fine. I did okay at school. I liked maths. I liked physics. I did those were my majors in high school. I had a really easy path with the English, being born abroad and growing up in an English speaking house. Things were easy from an English perspective, so I didn't need to spend a lot of time getting A's for my English tests. So that's kind of
Fantastic.
you know
I
childhood.
love it. Uh, I love it. And if we had a few more minutes, I would be so happy to go into a conversation about tennis and why that is such a mentally rigorous game and one of the most incredible sports ever. As a tennis player myself, I can definitely relate. If you were to look today at what inspires you, either on a personal level or on a professional level, in the day to day, when you wake up, when you do what you do, where do you gather your personal inspiration, big or small?
So when I look at people, I think that the people that give me the most inspiration who actually are people that have set ambitious goals and have achieved them, and it can really be across multiple fronts. It's you know it could be building a business, and when I say building a business, it could be building a successful lemonade stand, which is not easy in a competitive environment, or building a massive high tech company. Um, Even building, a hamburger place is again far away from the tech space. It's so difficult to build a successful business today. The competitive landscape, the ability to invent something new or to come up
Yep.
with a new concept and to craft your way into the market, make it successful. Those are the things when I look at people that have really achieved those types of kind of builders. I would say builders really get me excited.
I love it. Okay, Marc, last question. What if you had to choose a few words that you were to describe yourself? Or if I were to ask any of your partners, previous co-founders, employees, who is Marc? What words come to mind when I think of Marc? What would a few of those words be?
So in no order of importance, I would say competitive. I'm
Yes.
super competitive. I don't know if I love to win or hate to lose more. I think there's being competitive has got two components to it. Um, my family is super important to me, and I would articulate myself as a family person. My wife, my 3 kids, definitely play a big role. We've traveled the world as a family for the last 15 years. We've lived in lots of different locations, typically because of my work, and that's kind of brought us together as a family very, very nicely. And my third, I would say, I'm super patriotic. Um, there's I often tell people that I made Aliyah. For those people that don't speak Hebrew, I emigrated to Israel 3 times. Once as a kid,
Wow.
I had very little to say about it. My parents kind of schlepped me here at an early age. Their goal was to build a home and a family in Israel. And twice after that, we moved to the US and for extended periods. And we decided to move back. Israel's a big part of my identity. I'm super patriotic. Super keen and bullish about the tech scene here in general. So I would say that those are kind of the things that I'm passionate about, or that define me and my beliefs.
Marc, thank you very, very much. Toda rabba. This was wonderful. I cannot wait to share this with everybody. And thank you for the time and the inspiration. I can't wait to follow your work with Hysolate. And stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Excellent. And just FYI, Moshe Lipsker from Imperva.
Yeah.
He was my commanding officer in the army. So he was my mefaked tzevet.
Actually. Wow.
So small worlds. We are super, super, super tight. We've known each other for 30 years.
Incredible. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you very, very much for a great episode, Marc.